if China, its main goal in terms of achieving energy security, part of national security, is to wean itself off of overdependence or even eliminate dependence on imported fossil fuels. Let's talk about what they've been doing on the new energy front. And I want to get this out here. They are right now leading the world in new energy. And that lead is actually increasing. Would that be fair to say?
Of course, yes. I mean, some of the numbers from last year in terms of China's domestic deployment are just staggering, right? Last year we had 270 gigawatts of solar installed in domestic China alone. That's a number which just doesn't compute with the type of numbers which we see out of the US or Europe or even India. And from a manufacturing perspective, supply chain dominance, IP leadership, the prominence of Chinese firms is only becoming more intractable, and raises these interesting questions about how will Chinese companies go abroad, right? These renewable manufacturers, will they choose primarily to export products made within mainland China, or will they grow more active in terms of joint ventures and foreign manufacturing facilities to satisfy overseas demand? They certainly have the ambition to do that, to set up more factories overseas, but politics and geopolitics is a constraint on them on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, so let's bring in tariffs here. I think we have to, right, in terms of actually shipping this stuff out, exporting it. They've had great success doing that, which is why their solar panels dominate rooftops in places like Europe, right? The other strategy, which is to actually set up shop in foreign countries to make their solar panels and to sell them in those countries or neighboring countries, or even to use these countries as an export base. That's had, I mean, there's been pushback there. Countries like, let's say, Malaysia, and this was a while ago, right? They used to make solar panels until the Chinese came in and basically killed all of their solar panel makers, right? So in this kind of tariff environment, how much success is China going to have, not just in solar, but also in wind and other renewables, when potentially they could be facing this sort of domestic pushback from countries?
Well, I think the jury is still out, and there's really two key points I would raise here, Martin. The first is that a lot of the Chinese renewable companies are now pursuing a new model for overseas production bases, which is different than, for example, what you mentioned in terms of Malaysia. Interestingly related to our discussion of the Middle East, the Gulf is a prominent area of new expansion for Chinese solar companies in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and those projects are still in the process of going forward, but will come online at some point in the next few years and theoretically have better access to most global markets as a non-Chinese panel than if it was a pure Chinese export. The other issue at play here is really thinking about emerging markets, and as they're concerned about energy costs and energy security, do Chinese green technologies just reach a point of prices that are so low that other emerging markets are willing to take them even without industrial benefits? The case which has caught a lot of attention over the last few months in renewable energy circles is Pakistan, which in 2024 imported 20 gigawatts of Chinese solar facilities, which compared to the entire Pakistani grid was almost a third of total installed capacity. So there is an interesting question for the remainder of this year and next year, whether we have a larger group of emerging markets that we don't really think about as leaders in near-term renewable deployment getting attracted by those low Chinese renewable tech costs.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, quick last question with you, Herbert. We're running out of time here. You know, as the Chinese new energy boom goes global, is nuclear part of that? Because, I mean, they've got one of the most aggressive nuclear build-out plans on the planet, I know, right? I'm not sure where they stand in terms of these, new-gen modular reactors, et cetera, but what are the prospects there?
It's a great question, Martin, and it's one that comes up frequently. My sense is that the Chinese nuclear industry is still more indexed on its domestic project pipeline and is not very eager right now to pursue a new overseas agenda. The issue which has not yet shifted, the shoe which has not dropped domestically, is approvals of inland nuclear reactors. Currently, China is still only approving coastal nuclear reactors. That is the issue which I think the nuclear industry in China is still watching in closer detail. Whether or not they want to pursue overseas projects right now has not been high on the radar. And I think that would actually require more of a government push rather than nuclear industry push at this point in time.
Yeah, in a top-down command control economy like China, right, decisions like where to site reactors becomes, I mean, it's almost 100% political, right? So the fact that a lot of these things are being sited on the coast kind of makes sense to me, not just because of easier access to things like water for cooling, but more because that's where populations are, growth is, that's where demand is sort of crowded in, right? Why not inland, though? It's not just because of growth in demographics. Is it also because of geology? I mean, one of the things that China has to contend with as it decides where to build these plants is you're probably not going to want to put a nuclear reactor anywhere near a fault line, right?
That's precisely it. It's a concern with what the scenarios would be if there was ever an inland nuclear accident near one of the large watersheds in particular. It's just a leadership decision that the risks currently are too high that somehow one of those scenarios could play out, and it would be so destructive to the southern coastal population centers that it doesn't warrant the risk. Candidly, in all the discussions around Chinese future energy deployment, future energy growth, almost all discussions revolve exclusively around the growth of solar, wind, batteries, and other next-generation renewable technologies. Nuclear infrequently comes up in that context, despite the fact that the Chinese are one of the only countries in the world that can do renewable or do nuclear on schedule and on cost. And that's just because the confidence in the solar, battery, and wind space is so overwhelming that there's not much of a need to consider other technologies at this point.